for melanated people like you. We're going to have a remedial conversation about anti-Black racism, about white supremacy, and about just how it functions in this country, America, right? A lot of folks I see who immigrate to the United States of America are pretty much confused in terms of how the racial hierarchy works. What are you talking about, Jade? What's the topic for today? Well, clearly, Jeannie Mai or Jeannie Mai, Mai. She was on Dancing with the Stars. I think she's on The View. I don't even know what show she watches because I don't even watch television. I don't follow her. I have seen her over the years. However, I know that she's engaged to a Black man, a rapper named Jeezy. But this article is out of lovebscott.com, and the headline is Jeannie Mai speaks out against wave of anti-Asian violence. And she is quoted as saying, racism has no hierarchy. I'm gonna need y'all to come into the line is dead. Make sure you hit the like button, make sure you hit the notification bell, subscribe to this broadcast, be one to everyone in the house. I see you. Be sure to also go over to my course because yeah, these are the types of things that we talk about. Go over to flynubianpower.com. That's flynubianpower.com. Be sure to sign up for my 8-week course. We're talking about unapologetic Black power. Shout out to the mods in the building. Shout out to everyone. Precious Brown says, I'm here because the title was so true. Yeah, absolutely. It's time to check Jeannie Mai or Jeannie Mai. I think it's Mai. I think it's Jeannie Mai. Interestingly, I grew up with a friend of mine. She's in my age group, maybe a year or two older than me. Her name is Jeannie Mai. Yes. So, I'm definitely feeling, our folks who got middle names like May and such, who are foundational Black Americans. It's a very, very common thing, but this is not what we're talking about. We're talking about this Asian American woman by the name of Jeannie Mai. All right. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. Shout out to everyone in the Lioness Den. We're here weekdays normally at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. Fly Nubian QueenTV.com, which is the YouTube channel. That's FlyNubianQueenTV.com. The Lioness Den, we're in full effect. We have on code B1 conversations all week long. So you definitely want to come over and make sure you subscribe to the channel. Also, check out the content from every single queen, every single contributor on our network. Definitely make sure you're subscribed to FlyNubianQueen.com. On Facebook, we're also on iTunes. And listen, you need to sign up for our text messaging list. Text the word Queens to 31996. That's Queens with an S to 31996. Now, before I share my screen, I want you all to type something in the chat. Do you all believe that racism has a hierarchy? Does racism in America have a hierarchy? We say hierarchy, meaning that there are different levels to who gets the most privileges, protections, safety, and resources, and who gets the least amount. Is there a hierarchy in terms of racism in the United States of America? Right? Yes or no? Because we're about to engage in, unfortunately, a very damn remedial conversation about what racism is and how it functions in the US. And we need to interrogate Jeannie Mai's comments. A lot of people are talking about this wave of anti-Asian American violence. I was one of those people outside raising hell with other folks, other comrades for months on end, trying to close a damn nail salon in which 3 Black women were abused and viciously assaulted at the Red Apple Nail Salon, which is no longer in existence, by the way. It was in East Flatbush, Brooklyn, on Nostrand Avenue. However, they were assaulted with Miss Thelma and Christina. They were assaulted with broomsticks. Acetone was thrown on their face. A razor was used, so one of them got cut. Also, Michael, this bastard, the Chinese owner of the nail salon, held Christina against her will until she fainted. There was some Black man in there. I can't even really call him a Black man because he was telling Christina to calm down. He did not intervene. They were locked into the damn store. And then when the police came, one of the Asian American women, the Chinese women who was involved in the assault as an attacker, was faking like she was in distress, like somebody had attacked her ass. Yes, I'm cursing. If you have children, I'm gonna try to keep it to a minimum, but these are the things that really piss me off. And then the Black man who is the Brooklyn Borough president by the name of Eric Adams refused to come up to the nail salon, refused to come up to the demonstrations, refused to respond to any of it. But when Corner Store Caroline accused a Black child of sexually assaulting her in a damn bodega, he came up there and did a press conference, and then I had to call him out in public in front of other elected officials, clergy, and all of the news. I say all of that to say anti-Black violence at the hands of many members in the Asian American community have been consistent. They have been prevalent, okay? And honestly, only a few Asian American folk have really been in a conversation with other Asian people exposing their own racism, right? Because I do have some colleagues who are Asian American, they're Chinese American, Vietnamese American, et cetera, and they do work within the realm of social justice and undoing white supremacy. And they're actually in conversations about the same anti-Black racism within Asian American society. But that, I mean, they're very, very few and far in between, I must say that. And then also, I think that when it comes to other groups, you know, not just the Asian community, white folks, et cetera, they are very, very reluctant to call out their bigots, to call out the people who are perpetrating this stuff against us, because they don't want to be off code within their culture. There's this unspoken thing, yes, in my professional and expert opinion, yes, somebody type in professional and expert opinion, as someone who works on undoing anti-Black racism in media, politics, and education, I do know for a fact that anti-Black racism is something that is real, it is unspoken, and it is just accepted. Like, oh, okay, we got all these unconscious biases that we may not be aware of, but like, yeah, what happens to Black people pretty much happens to Black people, because I believe all this stuff about Black people, and I believe all these great things about white folk. And so when we're talking about a hierarchy, people are saying, yes, in the comments, y'all do believe that there is a racial hierarchy in America. I'm here to tell you, absolutely. The racial hierarchy is whiteness and white supremacy, white cultural norms at the top. And at the very, very bottom of said racial hierarchy are Black people. And if you want to be real specific about anti-Black racism, at the very, very, very bottom of said racial hierarchy is dark-skinned Black people. Let's go deeper. Absolutely. And then we see darker skinned, Black males in particular as being particularly targeted and have are subject to some of the most vile racial stereotypes. And so with other races being in the middle, but the race with the closest proximity to whiteness is the Asian American community, and they know it. So I don't know what the hell she's talking about, but we're about to get into exactly what her commentary is. Shout out to everyone in the Lioness Den. I'm your sister, Lioness Crown. We're here weekdays, as I stated before. FlyNubianQueenTV.com, the network for melanated women and men like you. Be sure to go over to Unapologetic Black Power course sign up. You can access that at FlyNubianPower.com. That's FlyNubianPower.com. Shout out to my brother, King Simon Presents. I always have a smile on my face when our brother shows up in the Lioness Den, and he said, like Dr. John Henry Clark said, Black people have no friends. Absolutely. Shout out to Dr. Clark, and shout out to our brother King Simon Presents. If y'all didn't know, I am going to be on King Simon Presents, and I'm going to co-host. I'm really honored and excited to co-host with him on Wednesday, March 3rd at 8 p.m. Eastern time. And we are going to be interviewing Divine Queen Mother, Sister Shahrazad Ali. And the topic is the state of the Black woman today. The state of the Black woman today. And if y'all didn't know, March is Women's History Month. So we're going to go straight. We're just going to go straight there. So yes, let's get into what this woman by the name of Jeannie Mai has to say. Maybe minimize that. I could share my screen. If y'all don't know who she is, I will just go ahead and share the screen. Shout out to everyone. I want y'all to all hit the like button and share this very important broadcast. Hit the like button and share this broadcast. All right. Now, this is Jeannie Mai, right? And again, the headline is Jeannie Mai speaks out against wave of anti-Asian violence. Racism has no hierarchy. That is absolutely false. That is absolutely false. And it's like even more crazy for her to think that racism has no hierarchy, that she doesn't get special proximity to whiteness as being an Asian American than her Black male fiance does is absolutely baffling to me. So this is what it says. It says the Real co-host Jeannie Mai is using her platform to speak out against the rise of violence and racism aimed at the Asian American community as a result of, it says it's of the COVID-19 pandemic via the blast. The surge in attacks against the Asian American Pacific Islander community has been extremely disturbing, with communities across the country seeing a significant rise over the past year. Jeannie Mai has had enough and is taking action by sharing her own personal experiences and also revealing where help is needed. Quote, this is what she said, y'all. Quote, racism has no hierarchy. COVID-19 and the hateful rhetoric of Donald Trump have catalyzed a surge in anti-Asian violence. Jeannie Mai declared over 2 million Instagram followers. What did she say on Instagram? All right, so this is the Instagram. This is a picture of her from Forbes. And this is what she put on Instagram. I'm just gonna put it right there for a moment. And I want y'all to take a look at that. So this was put out, let me see the date. Can I find the date? The date is probably at the bottom. All right, this is what she says. Racism has no hierarchy. COVID-19 and the hateful rhetoric of Donald Trump have catalyzed a surge in anti-Asian violence. Fighting racism against Asians is deeply tied to the social justice we are fighting for through All right, this is the sentence right here that really pissed me off. Hold on, I'm not trying to go to no Instagram. Let me unshare my screen, but I'm gonna just read this sentence again. I'm gonna just read this sentence again for y'all. All right, let me go ahead and share my screen right quick. Okay. All right, it says racism has no hierarchy. COVID-19 and the hateful rhetoric of Donald Trump have catalyzed the surge in anti-Asian violence. Fighting racism against Asians is deeply tied to the social justice we are fighting for through George Floyd, Tatiana Jefferson, Botham Jean, Breonna Taylor, and the countless Black bodies that have fallen victim to hate because racism has no hierarchy. Bitch, use a lie. Use a lie. Yep, I cursed. I called out her name because she's lying right now. There is no systemic plot. There's no systemic lynching. There's no systemic genocide against Asian Americans right now. And she's likening herself, like whatever this, targeting she feels as an Asian American person that they're claiming, right? She's tying it directly to the officer involved lynching of George Floyd, to the officer involved lynching of Tatiana Jefferson, to the officer involved lynching of Botham Jean, to the officer involved lynching of our sister Breonna Taylor. This is why I'm pissed. And this is why she needs to be checked. This is why she needs to be checked. Everybody hit the like button right now because we're having a remedial conversation about anti-Black racism in the United States of America. And y'all can go ahead and tweet her and go run tell that. Because she got a Black fiance, and if they have Black children, she's going to be teaching them that there is no racial hierarchy. And then listen, what anti-Asian violence, and on behalf of whom? On behalf of whom? I'm in the first paragraph, y'all. This is the second sentence. Fighting racism against Asians is deeply tied to the social justice we are fighting for through George Floyd, Tatiana Jefferson. No. Botham Jean, no. Breonna Taylor, no. And the countless Black bodies that have fallen victim to hate. No, countless Black bodies have not fallen victim to hate. Countless Black bodies have fallen victim to anti-Black racism and anti-Black genocide. That's what we have been falling victim to. So let's be very, very, very specific, and let's be very, very clear. Let's be very, very clear. Jeannie. And she's claiming it's because racism has no hierarchy. What is you talking about? What are you talking about? Okay, so then she goes into, describe some of, her experiences, right? So let's see if what she's what she's describing in terms of anti-Asian American racism, right? Let's see if that in any way equates to the gravity of what has happened to George Floyd, Tatiana Jefferson, Botham Jean, Breonna Taylor, and other Black folk. Y'all tell me, and y'all type that out in the comments because I'm about to be looking. I'm looking right now. I'm looking hard. I'm looking good. quote, go home chink. And then also let me say this before I continue on. I am in no way endorsing violence, or I don't even support in my real life. I don't have to say that. I'm not just saying this because I'm on the airwaves. I do not support the targeting, victimization, violence, or anything towards anyone at any time, right? Because my teacher, what Mr. Fuller teaches us is to be courteous, right? And you know, we're not going out here attacking nobody. So this is not the point of that. And so if she is, and what I'm about to read, has experienced any sort of targeting or racism or whatever, I'm not here to promote that either. I'm not here to promote that either. But what I am here to do is set the record straight and to have a remedial conversation about what anti-Black racism is. And you actually don't get to lie and spread false rhetoric, right? That, you know, this anti-Asian violence and targeting is in any way deeply tied to or connected to the genocide that our people are facing and have been facing in this concept of the United States of America, as Mr. Fuller teaches us. Shout out to everyone in the Lioness Den right now. I see y'all. Y'all are tuned into the Lioness Den. We are a B1 space and we are unapologetically Black. Period. 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 Shout out to my FBA family. Shout out to our ancestors. This is Black History Month. This is also, you know, every day is Black History. And also, you know, this is a time for us to get really clear and really codified in terms of the rhetoric and things that are projected onto us. When our people are lynched, when our people are killed by these race soldiers, when there's an entire system that everybody benefits from off of the backs of Black people who are foundational and indigenous to this country, like you and many, like myself and many of the folks who are tuned in, and when there's a system of anti-Black racism and white supremacy that has permeated the world, right? Where Mr. Fuller teaches us that the world is a global prison system of white supremacy. White supremacy is a global prison system. Then we have to be really specific and really clear that, like, our suffering and our subjugation doesn't get mixed up and tied into the other agendas of other people who are also practicing anti-Black racism against us. And like I said, I have some on-code folks, you know, who are colleagues, who are in the Asian American community, who are, like, you know, speaking out against white supremacy, how it's permeated their culture, how it affects them in their work lives, how their family also have, you know, had them internalize many anti-Black and racist, like, talking points and ideas. You know, stay away from those Black Americans especially, and Black people is, you know, Blackness is ugly. You know, they talk about how a lot of Asian women in particular walk around when it's sunny outside with umbrellas on because they don't want the sun to tan their skin, that there is a racial hierarchy. There is a hierarchy of colorism within Asian American society. When I say Asian American society, I mean over here, and then also within many Asian cultures, in which the lighter that they are, the, you know, more esteemed and elitist, or, you know, like, there is a class system and a hierarchy system even based off of colorism, and how many Asian folks, you know, are really dark skinned, right? And so there's like that anti-Blackness that shows up the world over, because again, what Mr. Neely Fuller teaches us is that white supremacy is a global prison system. There would be no racism if it wasn't a hierarchy with if it wasn't white cultural norms and ideas and ways of doing things ranked as normal, ranked as good, ranked as superior, and everybody else is lesser than. But at the very bottom of said racial hierarchy is anti-Black racism. Period. Black power. So listen, this is also according to her tweet. I'm not sharing my screen, but I'm gonna just read it to y'all. Quote, go home chinks. This is what Jeannie Mai's Instagram post says, right? The first paragraph threw me off. I can go on and on about that, like the comment about George Floyd and Tatiana Jefferson, anti-Asian violence, all this stuff. But anyway, this is the second paragraph. Quote, go home chinks. was spray painted across my aunt's car when I was a kid. We had just walked out of my house because she was giving me a ride to school. She asked me what those words meant. I felt embarrassed and shame. I didn't want her to feel what I was feeling. I have now realized that over time, I've accepted these racist remarks because as a first generation immigrant in America, I thought I had to accept the good, freedom, with the bad, racism. These times have taught me to unlearn. Well, I'm glad you're unlearning some stuff, but there's more you got to unlearn, sis. More you got to unlearn, sis. So she says, as a first generation immigrant in America, I thought I had to accept the good, which was freedom, with the bad, which was racism. It's interesting that she says that as a first generation immigrant in America, because our people systemically have not experienced freedom. Right? We don't just wake up one day and say, oh, okay, well, I'm experiencing freedom today. I'm free because I'm a Black person. No, because we got a whole criminal justice system. We got policing. We have a whole banking system. We have a real estate market and systems of that are specifically and intentionally anti-Black. So we don't get to actually, unfortunately, enjoy the same freedoms that many folks who ain't us, who immigrate over here. We don't get to experience that. So I thought that was interesting when she says, as a first generation immigrant in America, I thought I had to accept the good, freedom with the bad, racism. These times have taught me to unlearn. Quote, model minority, right? She says, model minority seems like a compliment, but it does great harm. I can agree with that. I know a lot of Asian American folks, colleagues and things, just people that I've known are oppressed by this thing, like this model minority myth. They are oppressed by it in the same way. However, are they oppressed by it in the same way that we are oppressed when we walk outside and we see a damn police officer and we don't know if the hell they're going to shoot us or not, or if we're chilling in our house and playing video games with our nephew and somebody just, the cops a pig just shoots from outside the window and takes your life with impunity? Not the same thing. But either way, I digress. Shout out to everyone in the Lioness Den. Karen Williams said, this is why you can't trust Blacks who mix. Jeezy ain't call her out on that BS. I hope he does call her out on her BS. Thank you so much for your generous contribution to Fly Nubian Queen. Really appreciate you. Let me take a sip of some water. Y'all hit the like button. Share this broadcast. Oh, and you can tag her as well. So look, this is what she says. And I agree with this statement that, model minority does great harm. And I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. Quote, model minority seems like a compliment, but it does great harm. And I am guilty for following it while growing up. Don't argue back. Don't cause trouble with police. Do your best to show Americans that we blend in. Which Americans? I think that's code for white Americans, right? Do your best to show Americans that we blend in. Because I'm going to just pause there. Do your best to show Americans that we blend in. I think that could be code. I think that could be code for white Americans, because there is an unspoken agreement and an unspoken social norm that we as FBAs, foundational Black Americans, as Black people, are not American. Like, we're not truly American. We're not fully American. Like the real Americans, the true Americans are the pioneers who came over here. The true Americans are the colonizers, the immigrants that came from Western Europe and Eastern Europe, and they all came and they colonized the savages, and they had doctrines like manifest destiny, and they created the greatest country in the world. Like, this whole anti-Black, this really racist and false narrative of who's a true American, who isn't a true American, has been internalized, right? And so when she says a part of the model minority myth is to, quote, do your best to show Americans that we blend in, that's for white folks. That's what a lot of Asian American folks think, in terms of trying to get in good and assimilate, to integrate and to assimilate into white American culture and white American cultural norms. Yeah, exactly, blend in. Why did I pick this book up? Y'all need to go get this. They Came Before Columbus. It's by Dr. Ivan Van Sertima, The African Presence in Ancient America. Everybody needs to read this. They came before Columbus. We've been here. We've been here. Everybody hashtag FBA if you're a proud FBA in the comments. Also hashtag I am Black History, because I am, and you are. Hey, Darlene X, what's up? All right. It says, Model minority seems like a compliment, but it does great harm, and I'm guilty for following it while growing up. These are Jeannie Mai's words. Don't argue back, don't cause trouble with police. Do your best to show Americans that we blend in. If we take the hit, life will be so much easier. This is what they think. If we take the hit, life will be so much easier, right? And so these are really dysfunctional things that, you know, model minorities, the Asian American community, have been indoctrinated into. Right? So anyway, she goes on to say, today I've learned assimilation is a masking word meant to break down who I am in service to this white America. Good for you. You still have some more work to do. You still have some more work to do because you came off real reckless in that first paragraph of this damn post, and we got to check you. We got to check you. Now, she goes on to say, just because we don't see public lynching anymore, absolutely not. Absolutely not, Jeannie, absolutely not. We do see public lynching. What do you call what happened to George Floyd? That was a public lynching. That was a public lynching. That race soldier stood on his neck, kneeled on his neck for damn near 10 minutes while people were screaming and videotaping it. He knew it was going to be circulated. And I'm sure he probably got a bag. He probably got a bag from some white supremacist organizations because they actually give like $1 million, I've heard, to these race soldiers who take a Black life. That was a public lynching. What do you call it? What is you talking about? Shout out to Nachimi for your generous contribution to Fly Nubian Queen. You said she's trying to put that us, but she's talking about white people, but don't know if she can't say it, she will lose opportunities. Well, yeah, yes, exactly. She will lose opportunities if she fully calls out white folks. In my opinion. But listen, I couldn't even get through the first sentence of this paragraph because it says, this is what Jeannie says. Just because we don't see public lynching anymore, race hate has manifested in other spaces of our society. She's very, very confused in terms of what white supremacy is and how it functions in America. And she's very, 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 I don't know if she's naive or if she's just ignoring or dismissing the anti-Black racism that is prevalent in this country, right? It says, just because we don't see public lynching anymore, racial hate has manifested in other spaces of our society, from broken criminal justice systems to voter suppression, racist cops and Karens, and systemic killing of Black bodies. The transparency of America's racism and social injustice reflect the country's denial of basic human rights for people of color. We need to work together. We have the same goal in becoming anti-racist and dismantling white supremacy. That's what she said. And what I'm here to say is absolutely not. Nope. Y'all take a look at this right here. This paragraph right here. I'm going to give y'all like 30 seconds to take a look at it. It's getting hot in here. Had to turn the heat off. She said, just because we don't see public lynching anymore, racial hate has manifested in other spaces of our society, from broken criminal justice systems to voter suppression, racist cops and Karens, and systemic killing of Black bodies. The transparency of America's racism and social injustice reflect the country's denial of basic human rights for people of color. We need to work together. We have the same goal in becoming anti-racist and dismantling white supremacy. No, we don't. No, we don't. No, we don't. Let me tell you why we don't. First of all, you have a blind spot. If you don't believe that there is a hierarchy of racism and white supremacy, with white people at the very, very top of the hierarchy and Asian Americans at number 2 of the racial hierarchy and Black folk all the way at the bottom of the hierarchy, below the Latinx community, below the indigenous, other indigenous American folks who are part of what they call them First Nations people, many of whom are lighter skin and Mongoloid origins, instead of like the FBA Black folk who are already here before Columbus as well, who are Africans. I already showed y'all pictures of my ancestors. I got other receipts of my indigenous Black foremothers and forefathers. However, if you don't believe, Jeannie, that there is a racial hierarchy in which Asian Americans are ranked number 2 and Black people are ranked at the very, very bottom, you are completely confused in terms of what you're talking about, and none of it is going to make sense anyway, right? And you're calling out the quote, broken criminal justice systems to voter suppression, racist cops and Karens, and systemic killing of Black bodies, right? Yet you don't believe that there's a racial hierarchy in which we are targeted the most and more severely. 2, you say the transparency of America's racism and social injustice reflect the country's denial of basic human rights for people of color. Nope, nope. People of color, that means you're lumping in every single non-white person together as if we have the same level of oppression, as if we have the same disadvantages in society in terms of safety, opportunities, resources, and protections. Not true, because you're number 2 in the racial hierarchy, boo. You're number 2 in the racial hierarchy, boo. The model minority is number 2 in the racial hierarchy. They're using and propping your community up to say, hey, don't be like them NIGGAs over there. Y'all better than them, right? Do what you need to do, conform and assimilate into white cultural norms to be Americans, right? Separate yourself from them, get on code, which the code is anti-Black racism. And more specifically, the code is anti-foundational Black American racism. Let's be very, very clear. And you will be successful. And you will be successful. We will accept you, right? This is what white folks say. This is what white supremacy says in America to Asian Americans. We will accept you. We will exalt you over you. And we will make sure that y'all are given, like, you are the model minority. You are the model minority. And y'all lighter skin than these Negroes. How about that? So that's the second point, which makes everything she says false. And then when she says, I mean, yeah, she says we have the same goal in becoming anti-racist and dismantling white supremacy. No, we don't. No, we don't, because many people, their goal is to assimilate into white supremacy culture. That's not the same goal, girl. Listen, she told a story about Go Home Chinks being spray painted on her aunt's car when she was a kid. That was a traumatic experience. That was a form of racism. She was a first generation immigrant to this country, and she was experiencing, racism, right? Okay. And in no way am I excusing that or to say, like, people should be doing that. No, but it's always some anti-Asian graffiti stuff that pops up, and then people are like, oh my God, that's a hate crime. That's a hate crime. Meanwhile, people are legit out here lynching us. People are legit out here body slamming our children in schools. They're legit tasing our children in schools. They're legit killing our babies. Kawan Charles, rest in power to him. Modern day Emmett Till. But none of those things are seen as hate crimes. None of them. And then you can't even identify or recognize a lynching when you see one. What the hell do you call George Floyd? What the hell do you call what happened to Tatiana Jefferson? What the hell do you call what happened to our sister Breonna Taylor? What the hell is wrong with you? What are you talking about? So listen, if you're going to have Black children by a Black man, the least you can do is educate yourself on the fact that there is actually a racial hierarchy in America that is taking place, that is disadvantaging many of us, that will, if you have a Black child, that will disadvantage that Black child. And it's the same racial hierarchy in this American system of white racism that you are benefiting from directly as a model minority. Fight me. Now, what do we mean when we say model minority? Hold on. Shout out to everyone in the Lioness Den. I'm your sister, Lioness Crown. You're here in the line. You're here. We're here weekdays, 12 p.m. Eastern time. We're here 12 p.m. Eastern time on weekdays. Y'all need to make sure y'all go over to my course, Unapologetic Black Power with Lioness Crown. And shout out to everybody who's a student of mine who's in the chat. Shout out to my students. Now, I am going to pull up something from NPR. Y'all give me a minute to look for it. Now, this is called Model Minority Myth, again, used as a racial wedge between Asians and Blacks. Okay. Now, if y'all didn't know, if y'all never heard of the Asian minority myth, I'm sorry, not Asian minority, the model minority myth, this is actually a real thing, right? And it's here for a purpose. Now, this is from NPR.org. This came out in 2017, April 19, 2017. It says a piece from New York Magazine's Andrew Sullivan over the weekend ended in an odd, well-worn trope. Asian Americans with their solid two-parent family structures are a shining example of how to overcome discrimination. An essay that began by imagining why Democrats feel sorry for Hillary Clinton and then detoured to President Trump's policies drifted to its troubling ending. Quote, today, Asian Americans are among the most prosperous, well-educated, and successful ethnic groups in America. What gives? It couldn't possibly be that they maintain solid two-parent family structures, had social networks that looked after one another, placed enormous emphasis on education and hard work, and thereby turned false negative stereotypes into true positive ones. Could it? It couldn't be that all whites are not racist or that the American dream still lives. So this is clearly somebody who is instigating some type of beef and really exalting Asian Americans over Black people, saying that they come from two-family households, they work really, really hard, they have social networks, and they look out for one another, not like what those Negroes do over there. Basically, this is I wanted to bring up this paragraph. This is in essence what the Asian community, what the Asian American community benefits from in terms of the model minority myth. All right. Now, there are other positive stereotypes associated with the Asian American community, that they work really, really hard, that they're all really good at math, right? Which is not true. Not all of them excel in mathematics. That they are smarter than we are, that they're more organized than we are. And all of these other positive associations are made to the Asian American community, which contributes to them being classified as model minorities within American society. So I wanted to, adequately define that for you. Now, on the flip side, why people may be thinking like, oh, okay, well, those are all good associations. Like, how is that bad? Well, it's bad because like anytime you project one idea, right, or any stereotype onto an entire group of people, it really takes away from their humanity, our humanity, right? Because we fall into that category too. So people say, oh, this race of people are this way in a positive sense, or all of this group of people is this way in a negative sense. What it actually does is it robs people of the ability for them to be fully just kind of like themselves, right? One, now with the Asian American myth in particular, they undergo a kind of stereotype threat that is pretty much unhealthy. Let's say I'm an Asian American boy in the 6th grade, right? Or maybe I'm a college student, and everyone is expecting me to be this really, really smart math whiz, and I struggle with math. Maybe I had an IEP in school, I had to get special mathematic accommodations, right? Or everyone's expecting me to be a good something, right? Reader or scholar or whatever. Maybe I'm dyslexic or whatever. The reverse side of the model minority myth, which can make it harmful, is that like then that particular student is constantly feeling like they're not measuring up, that they're not enough, that everyone has these high expectations of them and that they can't meet, and maybe they feel like a failure and they've internalized a lot of negative things about themselves. On the flip side, the Asian model minority myth that affects their community, right? So that in itself is a real thing, right? It's an internalized form of oppression. It's an internalized form of racism. It's an internalized form of white supremacy, which eats at many folks within the Asian American community, and especially those who are actively fighting and speaking out against white supremacy and white supremacy culture, right? However, what I find is that many of our Asian American counterparts who say that they are allies or that they're, fighting out against or speaking out against white supremacy, many of them are reluctant to unpack and hold accountable those within their communities and in their own families who are actually perpetrating anti-Black racism. Because after a certain point, I see that some of them just kind of fall back and just be quiet and get on code. So they're not actively interrupting anti-Black racism, right? You know, and even some of them who have, you know, Black wives or white, I mean, Black wives or Black husbands and have biracial children. It's really hard for folks within these groups that are really, really codified to speak out against anti-Black racism, because the code is, if you want to benefit from all that American has to offer or the American dream, right, then you need to get on code and separate yourself from them Black people over there, especially those foundational Black Americans, period. So that is code. And that's not just for the Asian American community. Many immigrants who immigrate over here, if they're coming from Latinx countries, especially lighter skinned ones, or even darker skinned ones, or folks from the Caribbean, the continent, different places of the world, have maligned us. They've maligned our culture. Or they malign other Black people who look just like them, and many of whom are even within their own culture or nationality groups. Again, we are all victims of white supremacy. It is a global prison system, but you got it real twisted if you think that for a second you are going to equate anti-Asian graffiti, right, or street harassment, or, you know, and some of that stuff, if you're going to equate those interpersonal manifestations of white supremacy, if you are going to equate those or attempt to equate those internalized manifestations of white supremacy that y'all may be experiencing in your culture, if you think that you can equate that to what we're dealing with and what we've been dealing with over here, race soldiers killing us with impunity meaning without consequence, state-sanctioned violence against our people, discrimination in the housing market, discrimination in the credit system, discrimination in the school system, discrimination in the banking system, discrimination in every echelon of society. How dare you? Like, who do you think you are? So you need to be checked. You need to be checked. I have other more constructive things to do. Right now than to, you know, draw out this broadcast, but I had to come in and make a point. Because this has to stop, and it has to stop today. Now, the next step for me is I want to see and do some research on what is being equated as hate crimes and anti-Asian violence. I'm not saying that, like, you know, folks are not being, you know, that there isn't anti-Asian graffiti or, you know, people calling them names and racial slurs and stuff like that. But I'm looking for research in terms of systemic anti-Asian American violence, in terms of systemic anti-Asian American discrimination, in terms of systemic anti-Asian American racism. In other words, shout out to everyone who's hitting up the super chat. If I missed you, I do apologize, y'all. I do apologize if I missed you. Why do I say systemic? Because think of it this way. If I am an Asian American woman, right, and somebody calls me an anti-Asian American slur, that is not going to stop me from going to the bank and taking out a loan to open up an Asian American business. Do you hear me? If someone spray paints anti-Asian American rhetoric and horrible things on my car or on my property, that is not going to cause me to walk outside my house with the high possibility of being killed by a race soldier because I'm Asian American. This is what we're talking about in terms of systemic. I want to see more, and I'm sure that they do have some studies out there, and I'm not being facetious. Like, I'm literally going to look into this and research it, and I'm going to reach out to some, you know, Asian American folk who are in the social justice world and look at some of their organizations. But I want to see systemic. I want to see some numbers. I want to see the data. I want to see that, because I have a problem with false equivalencies being made. She started out this whole post completely wrong. She likened this discrimination that Asian Americans are experiencing, to the lynchings by race soldiers of George Floyd, Tatiana Jefferson, Breonna Taylor, and somebody else she mentioned. Hold on. I want to make sure I get that name right. And Botham Jean. No, 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 boo-boo. Nope, absolutely not. Hell, emphatically no. No, nah. So I just had to come in here and say that. I want to make sure y'all go over to flynubianpower.com. That's flynubianpower.com. Sign up for my 8-week course. We are in week 2. We're starting week 2. The next live class is on Wednesday. You still have time. I want y'all to come in. If you're going to come in, be codified, be disciplined, and get ready to get this work in. Because we can't dismantle anything. We can't replace a system of anti-Black racism and white supremacy if we don't even know what the hell white supremacy is, or what anti-Black racism is, or what power is and how it functions. There's no road to Black empowerment through ignorance. There's no way to organize or be an activist if you haven't done your fair share of scholarship. And so this is what we're doing. We're talking about all things Black empowerment. So go over to flynubianpower.com and sign up for unapologetic Black power. I got work. I have things to do. Like, I'm not playing around. Shout out to Dr. Amos Wilson. Yeah, this is the blueprint from Black power. I'm preparing for my class this week. Jeannie Mai, you need to check yourself before you wreck yourself, because the things that you said in this tweet, it shows some confusion. It shows dismissiveness, but far worse than any of that, it shows a blatant disregard and disrespect for people like me and people who are over here at flynubianqueen.com. So, get it together. And if you do plan on having some Black children, you need to know exactly what the hell you're talking about. You need to be clear that there is a racial hierarchy in this country. And you need to be clear that instances of interpersonal or manifestations of interpersonal racism in the form of racial slurs, right? And you need to be clear that internalized manifestations of racism, such as the model minority myth, stereotype threat, respectability politics, and that sort of things, you need to be very, very clear that the interpersonal and that the internalized manifestations of racism that you and your folks may be experiencing is literally a drop in the bucket when we're talking about anti-Black racism, genocide, us being killed by race soldiers, our children being targeted, and us being withheld safety and resources and protections because we're Black and we built this country, and we have been walked all over and disrespected by everybody for generations in this country. You need to be very, very clear and make a clear distinction, and you need to show some damn respect, because we don't appreciate this. So all my family who's in the line is then be one. This broadcast is ending, but so is global racism and white supremacy. We will trample this beast through fortitude, preparedness, and collectivism. And always remember that they stole us, they sold us, so they owe us. And many people are still benefiting from the fact that, right, white folks and non-white folks are benefiting from the fact that they stole us, they sold us, so they owe us. Until next time, family, peace and Black power.